Let the rain of your presence fall on me every day that I live, with every breath I breathe. Let the rain of your presence fall on me everywhere that I go. Yeah, let your presence flow, rain on me. Love divine, joy unspeakable, overflowing in my soul. This heart of mine is refreshed and at rest in your presence, in your presence. Let the rain of your presence fall on me every day that I live, with every breath I breathe. Let the rain of your presence fall on me everywhere that I go. Yeah, let your presence flow, rain on me. Shalom. My name is Ephraim Hernandez.
And I'm Lisa Hernandez.
And we're the Hernandezes. So we're here to tell our story of our history, how we came to be what we now consider ourselves Netzarim, which obviously means branches. And I want to start with a poem that I wrote in 2014. This is like kind of the middle point of our journey of becoming messianic, if you will. And it's called Ya no estoy escondido. My brethren, my cousins, let not your heart be faint. We grow by the dozens in the secret place of constraint. In all of our passions of art, deep anguish and depths of wane, the cryptic signs of our heart, remembering the bloody stains. Bitter and angry, I know, for tricks and betrayals amiss, so many a mortal blow, crying out for an ancient bliss. Forget, forget, let me die, we cry, sorrowfully, wearily vexed, exiled, expelled, marginalized, and distilled. The crushing just strengthens reflex. Let me find you, my cousin, we'll be lost together. In this arid, waterless basin, hold this, my tether. Let's do this together. I am no longer hiding, I declare. Who understands this shout? I have no clout. That's not what this is about. My brethren, my cousins, I raise this banner from within my bosom in no brash manner. For glory and honor, the chosen are known. No longer will we wander, no longer be alone. Ya no estoy escondido. Now that poem is a little bit of a nutshell of where we came to realize who we are. And that was a journey that took place as my wife and I married. As soon as we married in 2005, it's been 20 years, Abba started leading us and guiding us back home to him. And so this is that poem is in my book, Levitical Soul, which is 30 years of my poetry. And I hope to have it someday ready for people to experience. But we have, we both come from apostolic families, from the Apostolic Assembly, Spanish Apostolic Assembly. And my wife's grandpa was Pedro Gutierrez, who was a very well-used servant of Yah, who, he has a reputation in the apostolic families as being a servant of Yah, a powerful teacher, powerful preacher. He was used in healing all the time, all over the Southwest, California, Mexico,
Colorado.
And he was a humble man. He just was just a servant of Yah. He didn't expect to be well known, but we all know. My wife, my precious wife, Lisa, has received from him the anointing that he had in music. And so I'm blessed as I strive to be a servant of Yah to be coupled with her. We were actually attending the Apostolic Assembly Church when the pastor, who I will not name at the moment, decided that he was going to seek to learn Judaism. And so after about 8 or 9 years of pastoring in the Apostolic Assembly, he left honorably and he started to learn Judaism. Mm-hmm. At the time in the Apostolic Church, with what happened in that situation, just like a lot of breakups in churches happen, it was not pretty. And my wife said, no, I'm not going to go there anymore. And I was the treasurer at the time of the church, and I was also doing other ministries there. So I had to wait, and I had to pray, and I had to say, Father, what do you want me to do? Whatever you say, I'll do. And just like we as believers will fleece Yah, I fleeced him and said, if you want me to leave, then just remove these ministries from me and free me up, and I'll know that that's what you want me to do. He did. I left, and we started learning from this brother. That led us to practicing Orthodox Judaism for nearly 3 years. And that was an experience that we have definitely learned from, definitely benefited from, but we do not practice Orthodox Judaism now. Our families have known each other for 4 generations at least. Her grandpa Pedro pastored my dad's, my grandparents, and my great-grandparents in Denver, where he had a church. And he built all his own churches. Everywhere he went, if he wanted a church, he built it. He wanted a pulpit, he built it. Mm-hmm. I guess that's what the men did that in those days. You built the churches you wanted to serve Yah in. So our journey has been, we're not the only ones. There's others. As a matter of fact, her Uncle Fred and Aunt Mildred, which I've known since childhood, and she's known since childhood. She grew up in New Mexico. I grew up in Colorado. And we've all known the same people. The Ochoas, the Escuderos. We've known the same people. We've interacted with the same people. Little did we know, years later we would meet and marry. But this is a tradition of the Sephardic people. And that's who we are. We're Sephardic, descendants of the Sephardic people. We're also descendants of native people. So we are, interestingly enough, kind of a really big enigma in our way of believing and living. So our journey took us from apostolic, Pentecostal first, Pentecostal, apostolic, Orthodox Judaism, Messianic Judaism, and of course, I have a history of a lot of experience in other church organizations myself. So we've been together for 20 years. We have 5 children total, because she has children that I helped raise. And I don't know where to go from here.
Well, I can talk,
Yes,
I
please.
suppose. So back in 2008, when we were attending the Asamblea Apostolica de Fe en Cristo Jesús is what it was called, and we were under this pastor. My husband once we were invited to their house to eat, and that is where he revealed to my husband a tzitzit that he had been carrying, and I had wondered actually, because I saw him preaching with it, and I would see this thing being shaken outside of his handkerchief, and come to find out it was a tzitzit. So he told him what the tzitzit was and why he had it, and that he had been studying Judaism, and we were the only people in the congregation that he told. And during that time that we were there, he actually had a Passover with the church, and we attended. It was our first Passover there. But I know when I was little, my grandfather used to keep Passover in his home, and all my family would come from California, and my grandmother would make the matzah. And I remember that she would be in the kitchen and she would be making the matzah and just tears, and she'd be speaking in tongues and praying, and they would set themselves apart during this time. And my grandfather would be outside with his sons, Moses and Joseph, and my dad, and they would be out there getting the goat ready for slaughter, and they would do that. And I remember I was out there when they did it. Grandpa hang him upside down and, cut the throat, pull out this thing, I guess, from the throat. I don't know, it's a main artery or something that they pull out, and drain the blood in this bucket. And he would get his paintbrush at the time and get the blood on the paintbrush and put it on the posts there, I guess just in remembrance of the Exodus and the Passover. And then they would get that goat down and they would cook it in the ground, and then we'd have goat tacos with matzah. And the wine that my grandfather ordered, my mom and my aunt used to tease him, the story goes from their mouths. And they would say, "Well, why, Dad, do you have to go purchase such a big box of wine from Israel? Why can't you just go down the street? There's a liquor store there, and just get one bottle." And he would say no. He said it can't touch Gentile hands. And so remembering all of these stories and whatnot, so many stories.
And then your grandma making unleavened.
My grandma making the matzah. And actually I have her recipe in her own handwriting, which is great.
And she's Portuguese.
And her last name is, we pronounce it here in the States, Ferreira. But we just found out it's Ferreira.
From a Portuguese
young lady that's from Portugal that let us know that Mascarenhas last name is Mascarenhas. And then my husband got to talking to her, and you can tell about what she said.
Well, that she just said that we were telling her that, did you know that you're Jewish? Mm-hmm. And she said, yeah. Like it was nothing.
Yeah.
And
they teach it to us in school.
They teach it to us in school growing up. Yeah. So she knew.
Beautiful.
And we come from Spanish and Portuguese families. Mascarenhas being the Portuguese, mm-hmm. Hernandez being likely Spanish, and then different native
right.
families.
So you're Navajo.
Well, partly. I mean, my mom says that we're like some other tribe, but I don't know what it is. And she was with that tribe was actually conquered by the Apache at some point, so I don't really know what it is. And then
your grandmother was Navajo.
My grandmother was right. Navajo.
And my grandmother's mother, my dad's mother was Cherokee. So my grandmother on my dad's side was half Cherokee, and it goes on from there. So I do have some Cherokee in me, though probably not much. But the wonderful thing is that the way that you found out about this heritage.
Oh, yes. So we had already found out of our Hebrew roots.
Abba
had been leading us, and we were doing all kinds of genealogy research and trying to look up family trees and stuff. And the more books we read, the more we started coming across the crypto-Jewish things. And we obviously felt that way because I've always been desirous of ministry work and being a servant to the people. You've been gifted in ministry work, and desirous of being a servant to the people. When we came together, it was just like we just flowed into that, right? It was so easy to
It was obvious.
to do that. I was always in a praise singer. I was always in worship. I was a worship leader in church. I taught myself the guitar so that I can write music, and I write music. And so my grandma and my dad were at our house in Albuquerque. We needed some more information other than just the research. We already knew, we were already attending the Olive Tree Fellowship, I think, or about to. And my grandma and my dad came to visit. I sat them down and I asked them both, do you know anything about us having a Jewish ancestry? And my dad didn't know, but my grandma had it. She had the clue. So she looks up back in her memory and she says, you know what?
I remember.
My daddy told me that our name used to have an H, and that I was to remember to always pass it down. So Mascarenhas was a Portuguese name. It had an H, Mascarenhas. And that H, when our family left Portugal, was removed. And it was passed on orally throughout the generations, every generation for about, I think it was about at least 10 generations. This information was being passed on orally. And not everybody got the information. If you had 12 children, maybe only 2 got it. And my grandma was one of the ones that got that information. So when I returned to Torah observance and I questioned her, that was the information that came up. How would she know that the question related to the answer? How would she know that? That's a spiritually discerned situation. And so mascara means masked. Mascara. So literally the name of the family is masked ones, which the name itself came from a via that was given to one of our ancestors by one of the kings of King Sancho I of Portugal. Gave our ancestor that via because he had gone out and helped him to conquer and expand his territory. So that's how we came to have that name. So it's de Mascarenhas, of Mascarenhas, or Mascarenhas. So that's my Portuguese history, and that's how I came to understand that I had the oral information to prove that we were who we already discovered we were.
Yes.
We needed that actual oral connection.
Even though your family we had already known was in the book To the Ends of the Earth by Stanley Hordes.
Yes.
The Mascarenhas, and they were burned at the stake for keeping Judaism.
Right.
So we already knew that the Mascarenhas family was in there, but he needed that proof still from his family. So that's what happened there.
Yeah.
And with me, what happened was I was recalling things from when I was young. My grandmother teaching me how to properly sweep a floor. And I didn't understand it back then. But when I started to learn Judaism and how they swept their floors, I said, oh, my grandma taught me this. And then I remember being young, probably about 10 or 11, and my grandpa was sitting in the living room and he tells her, and we were in the kitchen, he says, Eloisa, why don't you teach Elisa that dance you used to do when you were a girl? And I thought, Grandma, what dance? First of all, that's unheard of, right, in the Apostolic Church.
Yeah.
And I thought, uh-oh. And then she says, what dance? And he says, you know, that one you used to dance as a girl. And, of course, she used to dance the Charleston, too. But that was later I found out about that. And so she said, the hora. And I remember being so like, oh,
horrified.
It doesn't sound good. I can't believe my grandma was dancing something called the hora. What is that? And so she taught me this dance. And I had really forgotten all about it until we came into Judaism. And we actually went to a shul in Pueblo, and they were dancing the hora. And I said, hey, I know that dance. My grandma taught me that dance. That's what it was. It's the hora. And I realized it was a Jewish dance, which was very interesting. And then so that happened. And then moving forward many years, my grandmother was ill, and she had been taken to the hospital in Los Alamos, New Mexico. And so it was me. I stayed with my grandpa at the house, and everybody left. And he called me in his room. He says, "Lisa, come here," and closed the door. Okay. So I went in and I closed the door, and he said, "Go and get me the Bible and the Time magazine from off the shelf over there." So I went and grabbed it. He said, it was Zechariah something, I don't remember. It was the one where it talks about how God's going to carry us back on eagle's wings. And I read that. And then he said, "Now open the Time magazine to such and such a page." And this was back in 2000, the end of 2007, I believe.
Well, we hadn't even come to
Actually, it might have been, okay. Oh. Yes. So 2000, end of maybe 2007-ish, maybe going into 2008, January.
We hadn't even come into the knowledge of.
Yes, we were. We were living in Pueblo at the time. So it must have been around, and we already knew our Hebrew roots. We knew that we had Hebrew roots. We just didn't hear it from our family yet. And so
we
when
wanted to move to Israel.
Yes, we were planning around that time to move back to Israel. And so he says, "Now read me this page on the Time magazine." And so I read about all the things that were going on in Israel, the persecutions and whatnot of the Jewish people there. And he said, "Do you see what they're doing to our people over there?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "We have got to pray for our people. And now is not the time, Lisa, to go back home, but soon, okay?" And I said, "Okay." And nobody had known.
So that shot our plans out of the sky.
Yeah, that was it. That was the answer.
Like, okay.
That was Abba. And then a couple months later, Grandma passed away. We came.
Well, she told you too.
Oh, yes, on her grandma's deathbed. I went in the room and I was standing there beside her. And she looked at me and I said, "My beautiful grandmother." And she reached up and touched my face and she said, "My beautiful granddaughter." She said, "You keep searching and you're going to find." And I had already found. She just didn't know. And then she passed. We came back for the funeral. We were staying in the little building on my mother's property that used to be a church. My grandfather pastored for a long time. So
Pastor Electricity.
The angel gave him the name Pastor Electricity.
In his elder years.
Other story, but amazing, beautiful testimony. But anyhow, he was used in many miracles, like my husband said, healing miracles and other miracles. But we came back and we were staying there, and I had come out from there and I was walking up into my mother's home, and I walked in.
This is a good one.
On a heated conversation between my grandfather and my dad. And my grandfather was quoting scripture to my dad out of the prophets. And my dad was shaking his head and saying, that the Jews in Israel, they were not going to go to heaven because they did not know Jesus. They were all going to go to hell. And
but he didn't specify the Jews in Israel. He just said the Jews.
He said the Jews. Yes,
right.
He didn't specify at that time. He said all the Jews are going to hell because they don't have Jesus. And my grandpa stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Lisa, I'm a Jew."
He raised his hands, didn't he?
He raised his hands. "I'm a Jew." Can't do it like Grandpa did, but he said, "You're a Jew. Did you hear what your daddy said? You might as well go start any religion. Anyways, you're going to hell because you're a Jew." And my daddy looked at him and he said, "I didn't say you were going to hell. Only the ones that don't have Jesus." My grandpa said, "I don't know what kind of doctrine you're teaching. Sounds to me like doctrines of devils." And at that point I says, "Oh my goodness." So I walked over there where my mother was, because I didn't want to get involved. I was worried about my grandpa, and because he was elderly at the time. And my mom says, "Oh, Lisa," she says, she was facing the window doing dishes. She goes, "I don't know what's wrong with your grandpa. He has been talking so crazy lately." And I thought to myself, he's not talking crazy. He's telling you the truth. He's telling you who you are. You are a Jew. Embrace it. They didn't want to hear it. And so, anyways, that happened where Grandpa just flat out told everybody he was a Jew and we were Jews.
He finally had enough.
He had had enough. And that was his way of saying it. And that's how I found out by them that that's exactly who we were. But backing up, when I was younger and he would preach, he would often go up there and he would tell everybody that he was a Levite.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also his way of saying he was from the house of Levi. And then after he passed and you inherited his books, he had books on all the tribes. And one of them was starred by the tribe of Joseph too, and other tribes as well. And I think he was just trying to tell us what was going on.
Well, he told you.
He was still hidden. He told me.
I mean, he didn't point to your mom or your dad.
Yeah.
He pointed at you.
Right. He did. That's right. He told me. He said, "You're a Jew."
That was the spirit of Yah.
So that was Yah. He was just confirming. But to this day, I'm the only one in the family that has accepted Yeshua.
Well, besides Uncle Fred.
And Uncle Fred and Aunt Mildred, yes.
Yeah. So we're still in contact with them.
Yeah. So that's my story.
Yeah.
Torah Works, yeah.
So we started a ministry, which was my desire for many years to minister, and I had ministered. I ministered in churches in lots of different capacities. But living in New Mexico, we became homeless on a few occasions. It was very difficult in New Mexico. 14 years in New Mexico, and we became homeless. One for various reasons. I guess I don't need to go into that. But the last time we did, it was a long period of time.
It was Abba.
We were displaced, and the things that were happening to us were just not humane. They were wrong. They were
but Abba was
corrupt.
trying to teach us to trust him.
Yes.
That's the whole lesson.
That's the end lesson for sure. But those events just drove me more to starting a ministry. So I did with the mission to take up the cause of human dignity, because what was being crushed was human dignity all over the place, especially in New Mexico. So that was the original. That was the original mission, but it's a spiritual ministry. It's a Torah ministry. It's Torah Works Ministries. So TORAH is the acronym, which stands for trust. Human dignity is derived from trust, obedience, respect, and honor in the Creator. And so that's the acronym. And I just call it Torah Works.
Torah works, and Torah does work.
It does.
Yes,
it does.
It works.
We're proof of it. We're proof of it. And we've seen it. So we started that ministry, which is coupled with a music ministry called She'ar Yeshuv. She'ar Yeshuv is it means a remnant shall return, or a remnant to Yah return, is the way I put it. And the desire for the music ministry is to just gather people who have a desire to worship Yah, a desire to come together as a group and be a part of something that is a catalyst for the regathering. That's what it really is about, the regathering. So the greater regathering of Yah's people is going to be initiated by music, in my heart. This right here is a medicine pouch. I wear it to represent the 12 tribes, because I carry in it the 12 stones. I came to realize throughout the process of this journey that I'm a Levite, and I've always been a Levite. In hindsight, when you start to observe Torah, all of a sudden a lot of things that didn't make sense, that you were questioning. When I was younger and I used to pray, I used to beat my thighs, I used to beat my arms, I used to pray so intensely that the blood would come out of my skin, just blotches on my chest and stuff, because I prayed so intensely. I used to repent for the sins of the people, even though there were some sins I didn't commit. I was repenting for those sins. And then probably the most important thing is that I learned through Torah keeping that as anybody who knows, who keeps the Torah, if you're a servant in the temple, you have to be clean. You can't be unclean.
Yes.
So we have a tradition in some of our families that you don't sit in your father's chair. So I grew up with that.
I did too. You have Grandpa's chair still that has the red dot on it.
I do, because he was like that.
It went transferred to you.
Nobody would sit in his chair. He put a dot on it. He said, "That's my chair. Nobody sits
chair,
in."
Nobody sits there. Everybody.
He knew he was a Levite.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up with that tradition. Not every family, Sephardic family or crypto-Jewish family, grows up with that tradition. So I asked my dad. I said, "Dad, did you grow up this way? Were you allowed to ever sit in your dad's chair?" He said, "No." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I don't know. We just weren't." Well, my grandpa, Reuben, was a minister in the Apostolic Church, and he was, for a period of time, I believe he was a pastor. I remember him being a pastor, my grandma telling me that. It took him a long time to get there, but he did. And then my great-grandpa, his dad, Synovio, was also a pastor in the Apostolic Church. So, you have priests in the family, you have traditions like not being able to sit in your dad's chair. These are hints of a Levite, of a Levite lineage, and there's a lot more. I mean, there's other
holy pouch. Now he carries the tribes, and then
I
he
bear
bought
them.
me this beautiful choshen.
Yeah.
And he gave it to me, and I kind of stalled to put it on for a couple days, and then one day I was going to put it on. I was looking outside my window, and I heard Father's voice in my nefesh, and it was really amazing because he told me, he said, is it too much for you to carry the tribes? Is it too heavy? And I looked at it and I thought about the meaning. It's very serious. You're carrying the tribes there. It's not just because you want to wear it. It's because you're carrying them in prayer. Every day when you wear it, it's a remembrance of who we are, our brothers, our sisters that are spread across the nations that still have to return. So the travail and the prayer that goes behind that is just, it's heavy. It is heavy.
So I had asked Abba for many years who I was. I had asked him ever since I was young, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Because he didn't speak to me like I would see other people say, God told me this, God told me that. I just know that at 7 years old I was visited. He visited me. And that testimony is powerful. It was at Memorial Park. I'll take you there, brother. Where I was running for a Frisbee that my dad threw. And as I was running for it, I looked up and there was this giant tree. And the light from the sun that was heading towards the mountains shone through the tree so powerfully that I saw colors. And I remember the wind blowing the leaves. And all of a sudden I was in the presence of Yah. I didn't know at the time, and for many years I felt like it was a dream, but I knew it happened. And in his presence, there was no time, there was no space. I experienced what it felt like to be outside of time and space. I also explained it like this. It felt like the sin nature was removed from me. I was completely free. I was a free agent. Yeah. And during that moment, he gave me what he gave me, which I always called it a compass. And I've been following that compass all my life. So now, if you go to Memorial Park, there's a memorial there, and that memorial has a table with a lion on it, and he's being stabbed in the side.
The saying is beautiful.
And
it's Yeshua.
It's right in the spot that Abba touched me.
Because they took the tree
The piercing of the Lion of Judah.
Yes,
that's right.
And what a spot to have put it where you had that experience.
Yeah, I know. Abba memorializes everything he does. Yeah. Everything he does, because he's a covenant-keeping God. Yeah. That was a sacred spot after that. So a memorial went up there. But the call, the compass, the search, the seeking, and when I first came to God at an altar, that seeking was that there was a code that got downloaded in me, and it gets downloaded to everyone who receives the Spirit, and it's the code that says there has to be more than this. There has to be more to Yah than this. We said God at the time. There has to be more to God than this. And that leads you to a search, to finding him and seeking him and learning of him and knowing of him. And you hear his word, and all you want to do is read his word. So after all these years, I'm 52 now. I've ministered in lots of capacities, and now we're the whole focus is to give him glory and gather his people. I'm a banner bearer. I went to in New Mexico. I lifted the banner twice. I got to lift the banner and raise his name,
Yes.
and I'm looking forward to doing that again. You know, Father's people have to unite, and the way that we're going to do that, the most significant way we're going to do that, is to consistently read the Torah portions every week. If we do that, we're going to inevitably become united.
And to stop judging one another.
Yeah.
Meet each other where
None
we
of
are.
us are
Father's
better than
leading.
each other.
Father's leading.
We're all children.
Yes.
And we should be meek and teachable.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for sharing your hearts with me and with the viewers here. And we just,
Thank you for having us.
blessings and shalom.
Shalom.